My name is Mary, and this is the story of the day I realized I had never truly belonged in my own family. I came to my sister's wedding, Ellie's, with a simple intention to celebrate, smile for a few photos, and play the role of the kind older sister like I always had. The wedding was held at a lakeside resort in Vermont, known for its flower-filled gardens and lavish banquet halls with soaring glass ceilings. As soon as my car stopped at the main gate, a staff member in a black suit stepped out to open the door. I took a deep breath, smoothed the wine-colored dress, the only one I felt suited the fancy event, and smiled as I walked in. I wasn't trying to draw attention or make the day about me. This was Ellie's day, and I had long accepted that I wasn't the favored child. But what I didn't expect was just how cold they could be. As soon as I stepped into the main hall, a receptionist greeted me with a dazzling smile. "Your name, Barry Evans," I said softly. Her smile faltered for a moment. I saw the hesitation on her perfectly made-up face. Her hand flipped through the list a little faster than usual, then stopped. Her eyes narrowed slightly before she looked up. "Here it is. You're placed in the hallway area." I blinked. "Sorry. We're just outside the banquet hall near the coat check area," she said, trying to sound casual. I glanced at the seating chart beside us. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Evans, were seated at the head table. Ellie's close friends and her husband's co-workers all had spots inside under the sparkling chandeliers. And me! I didn't see my name anywhere. "Maybe there's been a mistake," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. She smiled again, this time more awkwardly. "I'm afraid not. This is the assigned spot." My chest burned. I told myself maybe the hall had run out of space, maybe it was a last-minute error. But then I saw my mother standing next to Ellie, adjusting the veil on her wedding dress. They were laughing, clinging to each other, as if nothing at all was wrong. I walked over and kept my voice steady. "Mom, can I talk to you for a second?" My mother. Caroline didn't even look at me. "Not now." "Mary, can't you see we're busy?" I bit my lip. "Just a minute." She groaned, clearly annoyed, but stepped aside. Ellie remained still, her eyes locked on me with a smile that could hardly be called warm. "I've been seated in the hallway," I said. My mother shrugged as if that was hardly worth mentioning. "We had to prioritize. Close family, you know that." I clenched my fists. "I am close family." She let out a soft, icy laugh. "Oh, don't make a big deal out of this." Mary Ellie chimed in, eyes glinting with satisfaction. "I'm sure it was just a mix-up. Nobody meant anything by it. Weddings are hectic." Her voice was sugary sweet, but her look was anything but. I turned to my mother again, hoping for even a flicker of hesitation, but she just sighed. "Don't ruin your sister's big day, Mary. You should be grateful you were invited." The word grateful stuck in my throat like a stone. Grateful to be treated like an outsider in my own family. Grateful to be seated next to the coat rack. Before I could respond, my father Charles walked up. His voice low, like he just wanted the moment to pass. "It's just a seat, sweetheart. Don't make it a thing." I stood still. The anger was there, simmering quiet. Not explosive, just something deeper, colder. I smiled an empty one and turned away without another word. They thought I'd silently take it like always, but this time I wouldn't. I walked slowly out of the main hall, my heels clicking lightly against the cold marble floor. The air in the hallway smelled of silk wedding flowers and something else. Something out of place, like me. In my hand was the place card with my name, Mary Evans, table H, hallway area. The elegant cursive felt like a slap in the face. I turned the card in my fingers, my palm damp. I had hoped just this once that my family would see me as one of them, but clearly they never had. A soft click came from behind the door to the hall, opened. Mary Ellie's voice called light like a greeting, but enough to stop me. I turned. She stood there, arms crossed, her veil fluttering in the cool air, her makeup flawless, her smile anything but kind. "Are you upset?" she asked with no real concern because of the seating. I gave a dry laugh. "I'm not upset, I'm disappointed." Ellie tilted her head, her eyes lighting up like she'd just heard something funny. "You're always so sensitive. It's just a seat, Mary." "Who even cares?" I bit the inside of my cheek, keeping my voice steady. You know it's not about the seat. It's about how this family treats me. It's always been that way." She shrugged. "So what? You still showed up, still wore the pretty dress, still hoped for attention." She stepped closer, her voice dropping so only I could hear you're desperate for their approval. "It's sad." I looked her straight in the eyes. "No, Ellie. What's sad is that you need to tear someone down just to feel loved." That made her pause for a second, but then, as if it meant nothing, Ellie laughed. "You really know how to kill the mood, like always." Footsteps approached behind her. It was Mom Caroline with a tense expression, like she'd been dragged away from the party to handle something trivial. "I heard there's some drama out here." She asked, eyes on Ellie, barely glancing at me. I took a breath, telling myself I deserved an explanation. "Mom?" I was seated in the hallway. "I'm not some acquaintance or a distant guest. I'm your daughter." She furrowed her brow, then gave a tight smile. "Mary, it's not that I don't value you. It's just there were limited seats inside. I had to prioritize people who are closer." I stood still. "What did you just say, closer to Ellie?" She said quickly. "Aunt Patty, her best friend from college. The people who were there when she was sick. You. You've always been independent. I never had to worry about you." I let out a laugh so soft it surprised even me. "You never had to worry about me, and you think that justifies treating me like I don't exist." Ellie jumped in her voice, syrupy. "Mary! Stop it. Mom didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. You should be grateful you were even invited." That line cut deep. I turned to Mom, looking at her like I was seeing her for the first time. "Do you even realize how grateful sounds when you've made me feel like a stranger in my own family?" She said nothing. No touch, no hug, no apology. A deep voice came from my left. "It's just a seat, Mary. It was my father, Gregory." He stood there with a glass in his hand, eyes fixed on the floor. Still the same avoidance like always. I turned to him, speaking slowly. "I don't need you to defend me, but the least you could do is look me in the eye when you speak." He looked up, confusion flickering briefly before fading. Ellie shrugged like I was a stubborn child ruining the adults' party. "If you're that unhappy, you can just leave." I looked at the three of them, these people I once called family, and suddenly realized maybe Ellie was right. I tightened my grip on my purse and took a deep breath. Something inside me cracked, not from weakness, but from clarity. If they had decided I didn't belong, then I wouldn't try anymore. And what was about to happen would make sure they never forgot. This night, I walked quickly down the thick carpeted hall, my heels swallowed by the plush silence behind me. The music in the banquet hall played on cheerfully, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. But it all sounded like it came from another world, a world I was never really invited into. I stopped at a quiet corner, clutching my purse strap like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Ellie's smirk, Mom's dismissive shake of the head, Dad's distant silence. All of it swirled in my mind like a broken melody. And then a memory returned sharp and clear, like it happened yesterday. 3 years ago, I went home for Thanksgiving. The rare occasion when Ellie wasn't around. Off traveling with a new boyfriend in Portugal. The house in Albany felt strangely calm. No loud chatter, no trace of Ellie's overpowering perfume lingering in the air. Mom asked me to go to my old room to find some family photos for a memory album. I nodded, a little relieved to do something that felt meaningful, or at least included. My room hadn't changed after all those years. The small bed by the window, the old bookshelf, and the high school photos, mostly of me alone. I rummaged through the drawer and found the photo box, but then my eyes accidentally landed on the small drawer of my mother's vanity. I didn't know why, but I opened it. Inside lay a light brown leather notebook resting silently. Every page was filled with my mother's handwriting. Grounded. Careful letters. I flipped it open, not thinking much until I read the first lines. The first day Ellie went to kindergarten, she didn't cry. She turned around, waved goodbye to me, and ran into class like a brave little doll. I turned the page. Ellie loves the baked pasta I make on Thursday nights. Ellie used to be scared of thunder, but now she's much braver. Ellie's favorite birthday gift was the little nurse outfit I got her when she turned 8. Page after page, year after year. It was Ellie, always Ellie. Memories, recorded like a private memoir just for her. I began searching like I was trying to prove to myself that I too had once been remembered. I flipped each page, scanned every line. But there was nothing, not a sentence, not a line, not even the name Mary. I clutched the notebook so tightly my knuckles turned white. When Mom walked in, I was still sitting motionless on the floor, the notebook wide open in my hands. "You wrote all of this about Ellie?" I asked, my voice small but cold. She glanced at the notebook and smiled light, as if it meant nothing. I had to remember everything so Ellie wouldn't feel forgotten. "She's sensitive." I bit my lip until it bled. "And what about me?" Mom looked at me, her eyes unwavering. "You've always been independent. You didn't need to be written about to be remembered." I nodded, saying nothing more. But something inside me shattered in that moment. A part of my childhood, a part of my hope, and the part of me that longed for my mother's recognition. That memory came back so vividly in the luxurious hallway of today's wedding. Nothing had changed. I was still Mary the daughter. My mother never thought to include in her memory book and didn't think needed a decent seat at her sister's wedding. A chill ran down my spine, not from the air conditioning, but from the clarity. I sank onto the bench by the window, right next to the coat rack, exactly where they'd planned for me to be. I looked at the name card in my hand, printed in gold script, then at my own faint reflection in the glass behind me. The wedding went on. Glimmering lights, white flowers, Ellie's dazzling smile, and her expensive dress. But I sat here on the edge of memory space and affection. If this was where they thought I belonged, maybe they'd never truly know me at all. And for the first time, I didn't feel sad about that. I just felt like I was finally stepping out of the shadows they'd cast over me for so many years, and I was ready to face all of it. I stayed still on that bench by the glass, my heart tangled between memories and the present. Everything that had just happened. The way Ellie mocked me, how Mom brushed off my feelings like they didn't matter, kept playing over and over in my head like a loop with no end. "Mary," a low male voice startled me. I looked up. Standing in front of me was Ethan Bennett, the groom of the day. He wore a tailored tux. His tie slightly loosened his dark brown hair, tousled as if he'd run his hands through it from stress. In his hand was a champagne flute, until I stood up, smoothed my dress, and nodded slightly. "Ethan!" He looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly, like he was trying to figure something out. "Seeing you sitting here doesn't feel like you." I let out a soft laugh. "Really?" "Because your family decided I'm not worthy of a seat in the main hall." He said nothing. A heavy silence settled between two people who barely knew each other. Yet we're sharing a strangely intimate moment. "Mary." Ethan finally said, his voice lower. "Can I ask you something?" I met his gaze. "Go ahead." He hesitated, his hand tightening slightly around the stem of the glass. "Has Ellie ever said anything about me that seemed off to you?" I tilted my head. "Are you asking if I've heard her bad, Matthew?" "Not just that." He pulled his phone from his inner jacket pocket, looked down at the screen, then shook his head. "It's just lately she's been different. Controlling, secretive. There are things she doesn't want me to know, and I'm starting to realize something's not right." I paused. Ellie's harsh words during family gatherings still echoed in my mind, but I had never told anyone. Partly because I didn't want to cause trouble, partly because I was so used to being dismissed. But something in Ethan's eyes made it impossible for me to stay silent this time. "You might want to brace yourself," I said slowly, "because I don't think you really know who Ellie is." He opened his mouth to respond, but another voice cut in, soft, yet strangely powerful. "And if you're still unsure, then maybe your mother can help make things clear." We both turned. Celeste Bennett, Ethan's mother, stood at the end of the hallway, holding a phone. Her eyes locked on her son. She was the kind of woman who made a room pause when she entered, not because she was loud, but because her presence demanded attention. Today, she wore an elegant navy gown, her platinum hair, and a sleek bun, and her eyes sharp enough to see through anything. She walked closer and handed the phone to Ethan. "Look!" Ethan took it, his finger swiping across the screen. First a furrowed brow, then a stunned expression. I saw his hand tremble slightly as he scrolled. I couldn't see the messages, but his expression changed from confusion to anger, then to something deeper. Broken. "She..." Ethan's voice cracked. She told her best friend she was training me to be the perfect husband, said I was too predictable, and as long as she stayed sweet in front of you, this house would be hers. Celeste nodded. There are also messages to her stylist. Ellie said that a few months after the wedding, she'd find a way to make you dependent, and then everything will be mine. That's a direct quote. I looked at Ethan. His face had gone pale, his shoulders tense like he was bracing against an invisible weight. I can't believe this, he whispered. Mom, why do you have these messages? Celeste glanced at me, then answered. A friend of mine works at the studio Ellie hired her stylist from. They accidentally sent the backup file to my email when I rescheduled a fitting, and I read it. Ethan sank into a chair, still gripping the phone. The air around us felt frozen. I sat beside him, saying nothing. Part of me hurt for him, but another part knew this was the moment when buried truths finally came to light. Celeste stood there silent for a few seconds, then said gently, Mary, thank you for not turning away. I gave a small nod. I didn't need thanks. I just wanted the truth not to stay buried. And from here on out, I knew this wedding would no longer go the way they had planned, and Ellie would no longer control everything the way she thought she could. The air in the private conference room on the resort's second floor felt heavy. No one spoke when the door closed behind us. Only the hum of the AC and the faint breeze slipping through a slightly open window. Ethan sat at the head of the table. His eyes blinked. Celeste stood behind him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder like the only anchor left. I sat slightly to the right, hands in my lap, trying to stay composed even though my heart pounded so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. The door opened again. Ellie walked in with my mother Caroline. Mom looked confused, but Ellie didn't. She held on to her usual air of confidence. Only now there was a flicker of caution in her eyes and worry. What's going on here? Ellie asked, her voice slightly high-pitched, as if she was trying to regain control. Why are you all pulling people out of the wedding? Ethan stood up, and the look in his eyes was no longer a shock. It was a cold, clear resolve. He pulled a white envelope from the pocket of his suit jacket and placed it firmly on the table. You know what this is? Ellie stared at the envelope, saying nothing. Petition to annul the marriage. He said, his voice unwavering. And in case you care, I've already signed it. The room fell silent. My mother gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Ellie stepped back, her lips pressed tightly together. You are joking, right? She asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Celeste spoke up, her tone sharp as a blade. We read all of your messages, Ellie. Every word you said about Ethan, about me, about this family. There's no denying any of it. I did. Don't! Ethan cut her off, and for the first time his voice carried both hurt and fury. You called my mother a rich old woman who only knows how to write checks. You told your friend you'd have it all under control 6 months after the wedding. You called me too. Easy to manipulate. Just pretend to be fragile and you get anything you want. Want me to quote more? Ellie froze. I looked at my mom. She stood still, her face pale as if she was seeing her daughter's true self for the first time. Those were jokes, Ellie said, her voice hoarse. Messages between friends, not serious. Celeste gave a short, bitter laugh. And what about the divorce consultation you filed last month? Was that a joke too? That's when I saw my father. Robert entered the room, his expression heavy. I didn't know who had called him, but his presence seemed to make the room sink deeper into tense silence. Is this true? He asked, looking straight at Ellie. Ellie didn't respond. Robert turned to my mother. Did you know about this? Mom shook her head weakly. I didn't think Ellie could do something like this. You never think, he said slowly. You've never looked at what's really going on. Then he turned toward me, and for the first time in many years, he didn't avoid my eyes. Mary, he said. I'm sorry. Both Mom and I were stunned. I had never heard him say sorry, especially not to me. I've been silent for too long. Let everything veer off course. He went on. And I know you were right about Ellie. About everything. I didn't know how to react. Part of me had grown so used to being overlooked that this recognition left me breathless. Ellie snapped out of it. You're taking her side, she shouted, voice rising. Your daughter, the one you've always loved, is being turned on by her entire family over a few dumb texts. Ethan gripped the edge of the table. Don't call them dumb texts, Ellie. That's who you really are. You don't understand, Ellie shouted, her voice trembling. I love you, I just didn't want to lose the chance to build a stable life. What's wrong with that? Celeste raised an eyebrow. Is that what love looks like? Planning a divorce before the wedding even starts. She's lying. Ellie spun toward me, her eyes burning. This is all your fault. If you weren't so jealous, if you didn't poison Mom against me today, wouldn't be ruined. I took a deep breath, staying calm. Ellie, you did this to yourself. Don't blame anyone else. You've always been the outsider in this family. Ellie screamed, always pretending to be the good one, just to make Mom feel guilty. What do you want, to steal everything from me? No. I said, my voice quiet but clear. I just want the truth to be seen. My mother stepped forward. Then she looked at Ellie for a long time, confused, hurt, and finally broken. Ellie, she said softly, I can't defend you anymore. Ellie stood frozen. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, but no words could fix anything. Now. She turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her. Not fear of being caught. Fear because she realized no one was standing by her this time. Ellie stood there in the dead quiet room, breathing hard. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The carefully applied makeup from the morning was now smudged around her eyes. The pristine white wedding gown that had wowed everyone just hours ago now looked tight, burdensome, stripped of the elegance she had imagined for her big day. She whipped her head toward me, her eyes darkening. You always wanted to take me down. Ellie hissed, her voice cracking. You never let me have one peaceful moment, did you? I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say, but Ellie didn't need a reply. She charged toward me, eyes blazing, her footsteps echoing against the glossy tile floor. Hey! I didn't move. I wasn't afraid. And then, in that exact moment, a steady arm slid between us. It was Celeste. That's enough, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp as steel. Ellie froze, stunned. Get out of my way. You've caused enough chaos, Celeste replied firmly. If I let you do one more foolish thing, that would be on me. Ellie panted, eyes darting around the room, as if looking for an escape, or someone still on her side, but no one spoke. No one stepped forward. Ethan leaned against the table, expression unreadable. My father had his head bowed, brow furrowed like he'd just accepted a bitter truth. And my mother, the one who once excused every little mistake Ellie made, stood frozen, clutching her purse strap, eyes rimmed with red. Then Ellie pushed past Celeste, heels clattering against the floor as she stormed out of the room, her long train sweeping behind her through the hallway. I thought she would vanish behind the door, but no. She shoved open the main doors leading back to the reception hall, where soft music still played, where hundreds of guests were laughing, clinking glasses, and posing for photos against a backdrop of pristine white flowers. And when Ellie appeared, breath-ragged hair, disheveled, eyes wild, everything stopped. The music faded, heads turned. A murmur rose, curious, stunned, then shocked stares. The rest of us from the conference room followed behind her. No one tried to stop her. No one wanted to. Ellie stood at the center of the reception hall, what was supposed to be the most beautiful moment of her life, now becoming the stage for the downfall of a self-crowned queen. You think you can humiliate me like this, Ellie screamed, her voice echoing through the rows of banquet tables and shimmering chandeliers. I gave everything for today, months of planning, picking out every single detail, and now over a few messages, a few meaningless words. You're going to destroy me. No one answered. Ethan stepped forward, his gaze steady and unblinking. No one destroyed you, Ellie. You did that yourself. She shook her head wildly, tears spilling down her cheeks. You love me, Ethan. I did everything for our future. Celeste stepped forward, slow but deliberate. She faced Ellie, her voice chillingly calm. I once hoped you'd be part of this family, but you never wanted to be a Bennett. You only wanted what we had. A quiet AU rippled through the crowd like a wave. People were beginning to understand. Some guests exchanged glances. A few set their glasses down, their eyes heavy with realization. Ellie glanced around, breath uneven. She made all of this up. She shouted, pointing directly at me. Mary's always been jealous of me, always trying to drag me down. She spent her whole life in the background, and now she wants to pull me down with her. I stepped forward, calm and steady, my voice just loud enough to be heard. I don't need to drag anyone down. The truth carries its own weight. Ellie went silent. The tension was tight as all eyes were on her. Even those who had once cheered her on admired her, now just stood there in silence, turned to Ethan, clinging to a final shred of hope. You can't leave me. I'm your wife. We made vows. Ethan pulled the same white envelope from his jacket pocket, the one he'd come prepared with. He held it up in front of Ellie. "This is the annulment contract," he said slowly, his voice calm and cold. "And I signed it." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Celeste gently placed a hand on her son's shoulder. "Let's go, Ethan." As they turned and walked away, Ellie stood alone, surrounded by chandeliers and glittering gowns. She had once been the center, the star built on control and appearances. Now it had all crumbled right in front of everyone. A week after Ellie's wedding, I woke up in my small Boston apartment. No wedding flowers, no distant violin music, no judgmental looks or whispered side comments. Just me and silence. My phone buzzed gently on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. "Mom, the 9th call in 3 days." "Yeah." I didn't answer. I'd heard enough in that conference room in that reception hall, and throughout a lifetime of quiet endurance. I didn't need a half-hearted apology or a performative hug. I didn't need them to keep acting out a picture-perfect family just to save face. That afternoon, as I was making coffee, a text came through from Mom. "I know you're angry. I can't change the past, but I want to see you have dinner with me. Just the two of us." I stared at the message for a long time. The old me, the me from a few years ago, would have said yes immediately. I would have picked out a nice dress, arrived on time, smiled politely, and tried to think of light conversation topics to keep the mood afloat. I would have hoped, however faintly, to hear her say, "I'm proud of you," or simply say my name with genuine warmth. But that girl didn't exist anymore. I put the phone down. No reply, no anger, just no longer necessary. That evening, I walked along the Charles River, where small lights hung from the railings reflected across the still water. The crisp, early autumn air carried the scent of the breeze and soft laughter from passing strangers. I sat on a stone bench and pulled out an old photo from my wallet. A family picture from Christmas when I was 16. Ellie was in the middle, wearing a bright red dress, grinning ear to ear. Mom sat beside her, hand resting proudly on Ellie's shoulder. Me, I stood off to the side, half hidden behind the Christmas tree. I stared at the photo for a long time, then gently folded it and tucked it back into my bag. I no longer needed to force myself into a frame. I was never meant to fit in. Another call came through. This time, it was my father, Robert. I picked up not because I wanted to, but because I knew he wouldn't call unless it mattered. "Mary," he said, his voice rougher and slower than usual. "I'm not good with words, you know that." I didn't answer. I just listened. But that day when you spoke and your mother saw who Ellie really was, I think for the first time in her life she understood how alone you've been. A long pause followed. "Whether you forgive us or not, I just want you to know I was wrong. And I know that doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know." I closed my eyes. No tears, no pain, just a quiet sense of peace. "Thank you, Dad," I said softly, "but I don't need an apology anymore. I just need freedom." That night I went home, pulled out the family photo album from the shelf. I didn't burn it. Tear it up. I just placed it in a box, locked it, and set it on top of the wardrobe. An era had ended, and I didn't need to look back. The next morning, I booked a trip to Maine, a trip I'd always wanted to take, but never let myself because of family gatherings or other invisible obligations. This time, I chose me. I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need their validation. And most importantly, I didn't need their love to feel worthy. Because now, I knew my worth doesn't come from someone else's gaze. It comes from how I see myself. Family might be where we come from, but it's not always where we belong. Real family is made of those who respect you, listen to you, and don't make you fight just to be seen. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not to run, but to find yourself. Mary's story is a powerful reminder that not everyone born under the same roof will give you the love and respect you deserve. Sometimes protecting yourself means letting go of the relationships you once thought were unbreakable. Growth doesn't always come from being accepted. It comes the moment you walk away without needing an apology. In real life, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's an act of courage and freedom. What did you think of Mary's story and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt real-life family stories. Story 2. My name is Tess. 28 years old, born and raised in a small town outside the city of Savannah, Georgia. I still remember that gloomy morning when the phone rang loudly in my tiny apartment. The voice of my grandfather's lawyer, Mr. Allen, came through deep and heavy. "Tess, we need to meet about Mr. Franklin's will. He left his entire estate to you." I was stunned. Mr. Franklin, the grandfather who had raised me as his own after my parents' divorce, had passed away less than 2 weeks earlier. And now I was hearing about an inheritance I had never dared to imagine. That inheritance was worth over $3 million. It included his entire chain of hardware stores that he had built up over nearly 40 years, several riverfront properties, and an investment portfolio he had quietly nurtured, and the old house where I grew up. 2 weeks passed, but the memory of his funeral was still vivid in my mind. A drizzly morning, neighbors gathering to say farewell to a man who had always helped them in silence. I thought grief would be the only thing I'd face after the funeral and the day the will was read. I sat across from my mother Eleanor, who had left me when I was little, only to return when Mr. Franklin fell gravely ill. The look in her eyes that day sent a chill through me. The moment she heard the contents of the will, she slammed her hand on the table so hard the glass of water nearly spilled. "You can't take all of this, Tess." Her voice hissed a mix of anger and shock. "This is family property. It's mine. Do you hear me? You need to sign everything over to me. Don't make me say it twice." I looked up at her, my heart torn. The mother I had longed for was now treating me like an enemy. I steadied myself, keeping my voice even. "Mom, that was Grandpa's decision. I can't go against his wishes. His wishes. Don't pretend to be noble with me. What have you done to deserve all that?" "Well, I'm his daughter. I'm the one who should inherit everything." Her voice rose higher and higher until Mr. Allen had to intervene. "Mrs. Eleanor, please calm down." This was clearly stated by Mr. Franklin. "It's legal." And it was confirmed while he was of sound mind. She glared at me, her eyes red with fury. She sprang to her feet, gritting her teeth. "Tess, don't make me take other measures. Do you understand? Either sign now or you'll regret it." I clenched my hands tightly under the table, trying to hide the trembling. "I'm sorry, I can't." The air in the room seemed to freeze after my words. She stormed out at her high heels, striking hard against the tile floor, each step pounding into my chest. The days that followed were a real storm. Messages, calls, letters came in nonstop. Fake sweet words mixed with subtle threats. Relatives called me ungrateful. My mother's friends sent me messages I could hardly believe. I realized that what Grandpa left behind wasn't just an estate. It was a test of people's hearts. In those sleepless nights, I sat silently looking at Mr. Franklin's portrait on my desk. His kind face, his serious gaze seemed to remind me, never let others define your worth. Protect what is right. And I knew I had to keep the silent promise I'd made to him, no matter how rough the road ahead. I wouldn't let anyone twist his final wishes. The days after the reading of the will brought challenges I never imagined I'd face. My phone hardly stopped ringing. Messages poured in so much that I had to mute it through the night just to get some rest. "I never thought you could be so cruel. Don't forget the blood running through your veins is mine. Don't disappoint me any further." It didn't stop there. My mother enlisted old acquaintances, her friends, even neighbors, who Mr. Franklin had once helped to call me. They reminded me that family comes first, that children shouldn't go against their mother, that a young girl can't possibly handle such a large estate. I saw that every word, every message, every call wasn't just meant to make me feel guilty. It was a deliberate plan to wear down my will to force me to give in. Among those who pressured me, The most heartbreaking were my younger brother, Kyle, just 19, a freshman in college, and my sister Vanessa, 30 years old. The person I had always trusted the most. Kyle texted me one evening, "Don't make mom suffer like this. Do you know she's taking sleeping pills every night now?" Vanessa was more direct tests. "Do you really think you're doing the right thing? Are you going to keep everything and leave the family with nothing?" I read every word, every line. My heart aching. When did I become the greedy, ungrateful one in their eyes? I had believed that if anyone understood me, it was Vanessa and Kyle. But now they too sided with my mother, without hesitation. In that despair, I decided to seek advice from Mr. Allen. He welcomed me into his small office, where the scent of old wood and paper created an oddly peaceful feeling. In the middle of my life. Storm. Mr. Franklin once told me Mr. Allen began, after hearing my story, that if this happened, you should review his financial records from his last years. Maybe that will help you understand better. That suggestion felt like opening a new door. I asked to see the documents Mr. Franklin had stored in Mr. Allen's office safe, and when those old files were laid out before me, I finally saw everything. My grandfather had quietly endured. The cold numbers on the pages didn't lie in his last 3 years. He had given my mother over $300,000 for every reason. She gave home repairs, Kyle's tuition, Vanessa's medical bills, and dozens of other excuses. But what shocked me were the details he'd noted in his handwriting. Mr. Franklin had carefully written down each transfer, with brief comments sent Eleanor $25,000 for roof repairs. The next day, she bought a new car, transferred $15,000 for Kyle's tuition. No receipt. Provided $10,000 for Vanessa's hospital bills. Heard she went on vacation in Florida with friends. I sat there, my hands trembling as I turned each page. The things I had suspected but never dared to believe were clearer than ever. When I closed the file, I felt as if a huge weight was crushing my chest. I wasn't just protecting Mr. Franklin's wishes. I was facing the harsh truth. In his final years, he had been taken advantage of by the very daughter he loved most. I hadn't even regained a moment of peace after being drowned in pressure for so many days. When my mother launched a new performance one weekend afternoon, I received a message from her. "The family needs to sit down together. 3 p.m. tomorrow at my house. Don't make any more excuses to avoid this task. It's time to end everything." Those words felt cold, with no greeting, no emotion. I read them over and over, full of doubt. It didn't feel like an invitation. It felt like an order, or worse, a trap. That entire night, I couldn't sleep. I went through every document. Mr. Franklin had left the records. Mr. Allen had helped me copy. I carefully prepared a file containing a copy of the will, Grandpa's financial notes, and even recordings of past calls with Mom and Craig, where they had said things that still sent chills down my spine. At 3 p.m. the next day, I stood at the gate of the house I once called home. The sky was gray, mirroring my mood. The door opened before I could knock. Mom waited at the door, a calculating smile on her lips. "Tess, you finally came to your senses." I stepped inside, keeping a calm appearance, though my heart pounded in the living room. Besides, Mom were Vanessa, Kyle, and Craig. But what caught my attention most were two well-dressed strangers trying hard to look friendly. "This is Mr. Miller and Mr. Scott, the men helping me and the family handle this matter." Mom introduced them with a sugary voice full of hidden meaning. I nodded slightly, my gaze sweeping over them. Thanks to the way Mr. Franklin taught me to read a situation, I knew instantly. These were not the impartial advisors my mother claimed. Without hesitation, Mr. Miller spoke. "Tests, we understand that an unexpected inheritance can cause a lot of stress. We're here to help the family find a harmonious solution. This property, no matter whose name it's under, is still the result of the family's effort. We've already prepared a document to transfer ownership to your mother so she can manage it and ensure everyone's interests are protected." I stayed silent, my eyes fixed on the thick file. Mr. Scott slid across the table. "You just need to sign here. We guarantee everything will be divided fairly, just as Mr. Franklin would have wanted." Mr. Scott added, his forced smile obvious. Mom jumped in. "Tests. This is your chance to make things right. Don't complicate it any further, just sign." I looked around the room. Kyle stared at the floor. Vanessa fidgeted like she couldn't sit still. Craig had his arms crossed, his eyes cold on me without a word. I set my folder on the table, determined to stay composed. Before I sign anything, "Mom, gentlemen, may I ask a few questions?" Mom snapped. "Tess, this isn't the time for pointless questions." I kept my voice steady. "Isn't fairness best served by clarity, Mom?" I took out a copy of Grandpa's financial notes, turning the pages on March 12th last year. "You asked Grandpa for $20,000 to fix the roof, but 3 days later, you put a down payment on a new car. Here's the receipt." I held up a photo of the car with your social media post. "New car. Thank you. Life. Blessed." The room fell silent. I didn't stop. "In September, you asked for $15,000 for Kyle's medical bills. But Kyle, do you remember where you were that month?" Kyle looked up, confused. I was at school the whole month." "Exactly. No bills, no hospital, just a cash withdrawal. And then you went to Palm Springs with Craig the next week." Mr. Miller and Mr. Scott began to lose their composure. They exchanged nervous glances. I pulled up a recording on my phone. Craig's drunken call one night. "Tess, you think you're so smart? That estate should have been your mother's. We waited every day, just because that old man stubbornly refused to hand it over." I looked straight at my mother. "You call this fairness built on lies and deceit, while demanding even more. I'm sorry, but I won't sign anything today. And if anyone dares threaten or slander me again, I'll bring in my lawyer." The room was suffocatingly tense. Finally, Mom slammed her hands on the table and stood up. "You'll regret this, Tess. This isn't over." I replied quietly, but loud enough for all to hear. "No, it's not over, but I'll see this through, to protect what Grandpa wanted." And I walked out of that house, leaving behind looks of hatred and my mother's unfinished threats. The room was so quiet, I could hear the ticking of the wall clock. My mother remained by the chair, gripping it so tightly, her knuckles turned white fury, distorting her face. Craig had his arms crossed, his stare full of menace. The two strangers, the so-called advisors she'd brought, had lost their initial confidence, starting to pack up their papers, their eyes darting around for an escape. But what caught my attention most wasn't them. It was Kyle, my brother. He had been silent the whole time, his face shifting from uneasy to confused, and now his eyes met mine, full of conflict. He rose, his voice soft but clear enough for the room. "Mom, I want to ask something." Mom turned to him, surprised. An impatient Kyle. "This isn't the time. Sit down." But Kyle didn't sit. He looked her straight in the eye, is what Tess said. True. My tuition, the roof repairs, Vanessa's medical bills. Were they all not what you said they were? My mother froze for a moment, then quickly regained her commanding tone. "Don't listen to her. She's making all this up to tear the family apart. She's always been jealous of me." Kyle shook his head, his eyes turning red. "I don't think that anymore. I've stayed silent for too long. I saw you buy the car, go on trips, show off new things online. I always wondered where it all came from. Now I understand." The air in the room grew thick. Craig slammed his hand on the table. "What do you know? You're just a kid. Don't let her fill your head with nonsense. This girl, she's tearing the family apart." I kept my voice calm but firm. "Craig, remember, this entire conversation is being recorded. Choose your words carefully." Craig stiffened, the color fading from his face. The two strangers quickly stood, bowing their heads awkwardly. "We think it's probably time for us to step back. This is a family matter. We're not in a position to intervene further." They hurried out the door, leaving us in a room strung tight with tension. Kyle stepped over to me, his voice trembling but steady. "Tess, you're not alone. I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't stay silent and watch her be cornered anymore." My mother spun around, her voice shrill. "What did you say? Are you going to betray me? You're not my son anymore, if you walk out that door with her." Kyle took a step back. His eyes filled with tears. "Mom, I'm not betraying you. I just don't want to live a lie anymore. I'm going with Tess. I don't want to see any more of this." My mother seemed to lose control. She lunged toward me, pointing a finger at my face. "You'll regret this, Tess. I swear I won't forgive you. You traitor, you're destroying this family." I straightened, meeting their eyes with resolve. "I'm not here to win or lose, Mom. I'm doing what's right by Grandpa's wishes. I'm not afraid of threats. And Craig, remember, every word you've said has been recorded. If this continues, I'll have my lawyer handle it." My mother panted, her face flushed. She shouted, "Get out of my house now, you ungrateful child! Don't you ever set foot in here again!" Kyle gripped my hand tightly. "Let's go." We walked out of that house. The door slammed shut behind us. The sharp sound like sealing away a childhood that already bore too many cracks. When we reached the car, I noticed my hands trembling slightly, but my heart felt strangely light. Kyle turned to me. His voice choked. "I'm sorry, Tess. I was blind for too long." I hugged him, tears falling freely. "No, I know you just got caught up in it. Now we'll face this together, Kyle." On that road away from the old house, I knew no matter how hard the path ahead, I was no longer alone at night after leaving the house where I grew up. Kyle and I sat quietly on the sofa in my small apartment. The streetlight streamed through the window, casting our shadows on the wall. Neither of us said a word. There was nothing left to say. We had seen the true faces of Mom and Craig, heard enough threats and lies. Now it was time for action. The next morning, I contacted Mrs. Harriet, the longtime family attorney who Mr. Franklin had trusted most. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the seriousness in every word. "Tess, you did the right thing by not signing anything. Now we need to officially file supplemental documents with the court to strengthen your claim. Every piece of evidence Mr. Franklin left will shield you from any further schemes." In just 2 days, Mrs. Harriet and I completed a thick file. The original notarized will, handwritten letters Grandpa sent me before he passed, his journal detailing each, some given to my mother, and bank statements proving the improper use of funds he had sent her in his final years. Mrs. Harriet personally delivered the file to the Chatham County Courthouse, submitting it with a petition to protect the rightful heir from harassment or baseless demands. At the same time, I began doing what I knew would have made Grandpa smile. He established 2 trusts, one for Kyle to cover tuition and living costs during college, with the condition that he maintain good grades and use it responsibly. The other for Mom. But it came with very clear conditions. She would receive only a minimal monthly allowance for essential needs, and any additional withdrawals required oversight by a court-appointed financial advisor. Next, I put into motion a plan that had formed during countless sleepless nights. I created the Franklin Foundation, a charity dedicated to supporting young people passionate about business, but lacking resources. Grandpa used to say a person's true wealth isn't what they save up, but how they use it to create value in the world. The foundation began with an initial fund of $100,000 from the inheritance. Mrs. Harriet helped me connect with an experienced nonprofit advisory group to set up a transparent professional structure. It didn't stop there. I officially left my old job at the marketing firm to fully dedicate myself to managing the hardware store chain Grandpa had left behind. I visited each location, met with managers, and listened to employees talk about the challenges, frustrations, and struggles they'd faced during Grandpa's long illness. One store in Pooler had seen sales plummet due to unfair competition from big chains. Another in Hinesville lacked capital for reinvestment, its warehouse deteriorating, its customers dwindling. I immediately started making changes, upgrading facilities, renegotiating supplier contracts to lower costs, and most importantly, rebuilding team morale. I introduced incentive programs rewarding those who proposed ideas that boosted revenue or cut costs without sacrificing quality. Kyle came along on these visits, even as a freshman in college. He listened, learned, and sometimes offered insights that made me look at my brother with newfound respect. One late evening, as we were driving back from one of the stores, Kyle spoke, his voice filled with determination. "Tests. I know I was wrong before, but now I want to be someone Grandpa and you can be proud of. I want to learn to truly contribute." I turned to look at him, overwhelmed with emotion. "I never doubted you, Kyle. We'll do that together." I knew the road ahead was long and full of challenges, but for the first time since Mr. Franklin passed, I felt I wasn't alone, and I believed he was watching, proud of what we were working so hard to build. Time passed faster than I expected. Just a few months after officially taking over the store chain, things began to show signs of improvement. Though challenges remained for the first time in a long while, I saw confidence return to the faces of the workers who had been loyal to my grandfather. Kyle had somehow become my right hand. My little brother was no longer the shy college student he used to be. After each store visit, he took detailed notes, asked the employees questions, and spent evenings studying business materials. One afternoon, as we sat on the rooftop of the chain's main office in Savannah, Kyle suddenly said, "Thus, I think it's time we open a showroom focused on green building materials. It's the trend, and it's what Grandpa once mentioned." He turned to him, both surprised and proud. Kyle continued, his eyes bright with confidence. "I've done my research. If we invest in a small pilot showroom, the cost wouldn't be too high. We could partner with local suppliers, support them, and create a unique identity for our system." I was quiet for a few seconds, then nodded gently. "That's a great idea, Kyle. Put together a full proposal, we'll present it to the financial advisor, then get started." In the days that followed, beyond managing operations, Kyle and I spent time planning out the showroom in detail. And strangely enough, this very project ended up opening another door. A door to reconciliation with someone I thought I had no hope for anymore. Vanessa. One early autumn evening, as I was reviewing financial reports in my small home office, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered yes. "It's me, Vanessa." Her voice was so small and shaky. I held my breath to listen. "I'm sorry for calling like this, but can I see you? I don't know who else to turn to." Words failed me, caught between emotion and caution. In the end, I agreed on one condition. We'd meet in a public place to avoid any awkward situations. We chose a riverside cafe, an open space with Savannah's gentle evening air. Vanessa appeared thinner, her hair tied back. So different from the proud woman I once knew. "Thank you for coming," she began. Her eyes read. "I know you don't owe me this meeting, but I can't take it anymore." I stayed quiet, waiting for her to go on. Since Mom's downfall, everything's fallen apart. She sold the old house and moved into a small rental. Craig left. Mom's grown more bitter, blaming everyone, even me. And then I started to look back, wondering how things ended up this way. Vanessa blinked back tears, her gaze fixed on the coffee cup as they slipped onto its rim. It was wrong, tests wrong, to blindly defend Mom, to refuse to see the truth. "I'm sorry, truly sorry." That apology, one I had longed for, brought relief rather than satisfy. "I don't blame you, Vanessa. We're all victims of circumstance, but only time to trust again." Her eyes softened, gratitude shining through. "I don't expect anything more. I just want you to know I've always loved you and Kyle. And if I can, I want to make it up to you." That meeting ended in sincerity, but I kept clear boundaries. I gave her a chance to mend things, but I wouldn't let myself be drawn into any blind emotional spiral again. In the days that followed, Vanessa quietly helped out. She referred new customers to our system, connected me with some suppliers she knew from her work. I accepted her support with appreciation, but stayed clear-headed, holding firm to necessary boundaries. One early winter evening, as Kyle and I were wrapping up a long workday at the office, my phone vibrated with a new email notification. I opened my inbox, my eyes freezing on the subject line tests. "I'm asking to see you. Please read this through." I studied myself before opening the email. The words appeared unfamiliar and more sincere than anything I had ever heard from my mother before. Tests. I've spent many sleepless nights writing these words. I know I've caused pain that nothing can justify. All this time, I've been in therapy. I'm beginning to understand why I always felt empty, why I tried to control and hurt the people who loved me most. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I only ask for a chance to see you, to listen to you, to tell you how deeply sorry I am. I sat still in front of the screen, emotions swirling. After everything that had happened, I never imagined my mother would write words like these to me. That night I thought for a long time, then decided to say yes. But this time, I wanted to take control of everything. I arranged to meet my mother at a small cafe near the river, a quiet place free from the heavy memories of the past, and I walked in. My mother was already seated by the window. She looked completely different, No expensive dress, no flashy accessories, just a simple sweater and a light-colored scarf. Her eyes, once defiant, now met mine with hesitation. "Thank you for coming." I sat down, keeping my voice calm. "Say what you want to say, Mom." She clutched her hot tea tightly, breathing deep, as if to gather courage. "I destroyed everything, Tess. I pushed away the people I loved most. Craig left me 2 months ago. Honestly, I don't even want him back anymore. I see it now. He never brought me anything but more destruction." She continued, her voice thick with emotion. "I lived wrong for too long. I don't dare ask for forgiveness. I just ask, if possible, let me listen to you. Let me try to start over, even just a little for a moment." I said nothing. Then my voice softened as I spoke. "Mom, I appreciate your courage in saying this. I can't forget everything right away, but I'm willing to start by talking like we are now." Her eyes glowed with emotion, as if a long-awaited relief had finally arrived. We sat there, after all the storms, finally able to listen to each other. She spoke about her therapy sessions, about the first time she faced her inner fears. I told her about my work, about the Franklin Foundation, about the green materials showroom that Kyle had proposed and was gradually taking shape. That meeting wasn't some miracle that erased all wounds, but it was a true beginning. No more empty promises. In the weeks that followed, my mother began a different life. She moved into a small apartment in a peaceful neighborhood. She no longer showed off material things. She learned to live more simply, cooking for herself, tending to a few flower pots by the window. Vanessa visited her now and then, telling me that Mom was really trying. Craig disappeared from my mother's life quietly, just as he had quietly wormed his way in. I didn't expect a miracle, but when I saw my mother's new demeanor, when I heard her sincerely ask about me and Kyle, I understood. Some things are never too late to start over. A year later, Kyle in my life had turned a hopeful page. The business Grandpa left was no longer a struggling chain searching for direction. Under our leadership, it gradually became a pillar for the local community, a symbol of resilience and renewal. The green materials showroom Kyle once proposed had become the pride of our entire system. We partnered with small suppliers in the state, prioritizing eco-friendly products that helped residents access modern building solutions while saving costs, not stopping there. We opened 2 new branches in Brunswick and Macon, focusing on a store model combined with community space. Each month, we hosted free workshops on basic construction techniques and eco-friendly home design, attracting both young people and families looking to renovate their homes. The local community welcomed and supported us in ways I had never dared to dream. Former customers of Mr. Franklin returned not just to shop, but to share stories about him, the man who quietly helped them through their hardest times. Kyle, once a timid college student, now confidently presented to the board, led meetings with suppliers. I once caught him sitting thoughtfully by Grandpa's portrait in the office, his eyes filled with pride and a sense of duty. Vanessa, after reaching out and opening her heart, gradually found purpose in her own life. She volunteered at a center supporting women in difficult circumstances. Each week, she devoted at least 3 days to listening, sharing, and guiding these women to rediscover their confidence. One evening, as we sat on Mom's porch, where she had now planted small flower beds instead of the bare paved yard from before, Vanessa spoke softly. "Tess, I'm seriously thinking about going back to school. Maybe social work. I want to do something truly meaningful." I smiled quietly, grateful for these deep, quiet changes. As for me, once everything fell into place, I could finally focus on my own happiness. Then, the steady companion by my side all this time, who stood by me during my lowest moments, knelt to propose under the old oak tree in the park where Grandpa and I used to talk. His eyes were sincere. No flowery words. "Tess, I can't promise life will always be easy, but I promise I'll stand by you through whatever comes." I nodded, filled with simple yet profound happiness. The day I put on that engagement ring, I didn't think about the diamond or its material value. I simply felt warmth in knowing that after everything I had found someone who would walk beside me through both triumphs and storms. Brainery. I shook my head, wondering if everyone thought his own marriage as triumphs and others precious. The night before the grand opening of our new Macon branch, I sat alone in the office before Mr. Franklin's portrait. The soft light highlighted every kind wrinkle on his face. I whispered, "Papa, I understand now. Your legacy isn't the money or the stores. It's the responsibility, the way we use what we have to share and build. I promise I'll carry that forward for you, for the family, for myself." I knew the journey ahead was still long. There would be challenges I couldn't foresee, but I wasn't afraid anymore, because I carried in my heart the strength of the values Grandpa had planted in my life. Looking back on the path I'd walked, I understood that Mr. Franklin's greatest legacy wasn't numbers or assets, but the power of responsibility, sharing, and steadfastness in the face of trials. From a girl who seemed alone in the whirlwind of family conflict, I had found my path to protect good values and spread them to the community. Our lives today, mine Kyle's and Vanessa's, are proof that when we live with sincerity and determination, goodness will blossom and endure over time. What do you think about Tessa's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more inspiring stories about family and life.